Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of Let's Get Technical, my new playlist where I'm going to be making 10-minute or less videos on various individual techniques that can really spice up your painting game. Today's is on stripping, an incredibly important concept that I think you should get a hold of real early on, because it does a lot to free you up for painting and for trying new things. When you know you can reliably take off all of the paint that you put onto a miniature, it's way easier to just go ahead and try something. Even if it doesn't work out, you'll just try again later. For this, we're just going to start off with a little bit of material. The first thing being a bowl of not quite boiling water. I poured this out of the kettle before it actually started to boil, so it's not quite hot enough to damage the plastic miniatures, but is hot enough that it should soften up any acrylic paints on these guys. The surface of them will get a little tacky, and that's how you'll know it'll be a lot easier to peel off, since acrylic paint is, after all, just plastic. Our other two bowls are lukewarm water, which we'll be using afterwards to transfer them into for actual soaking. The miniatures are arranged from left to right in order of age, with the ones on the left being from the Dark Souls bird game, some of the first ones I painted, of this batch anyway. They were painted with flat acrylics over a black primer, which made, if you look, like yellow didn't show up very well. It made either a very flat or a kind of cloudy appearance that I'm not very fond of. And on Ornstein, for example, a miniature where he's a boss, he should be really impressive. Obviously the flat golden paint job really doesn't do anything to flatter him. So I kind of moved away from those because I wasn't liking how they were looking and I wasn't happy with my techniques at the time. The next one I have here is a Warlord Games Black Powder British Officer. And this was the first time I started experimenting with washes on miniatures, and you can see the red wash over the black primer wasn't showing up super well, so I started thinking maybe I need to move to a light primer. Here we have a light gray primed, just like the ones we've been working on in my previous tutorial series, with washes over top Chaos Warrior from HeroQuest. I'm not actually going to strip him because I want to keep working with him a little bit later, but I just wanted to show him as he is sort of a transition in my techniques that I've done over the last year, basically in 2018. Finally, we have Jaime Lannister, a miniature from the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game that we've been painting miniatures for the last series, basically, that I made. And in this case, what I was experimenting with was using actually metallic Sharpies and colored Sharpies to sort of give some more vibrancy to the colors. I actually really liked the effect at first, but now I see it's kind of glossy, it's a little smudgy, and the black outlining I tried to do to keep it neater, I'm not very fond of. So I think this is a great opportunity to take Jaime, who's going to be a hero, and again, someone who should catch the eye and be very spectacular on the tabletop, and bring him up to this standard that I've been able to achieve with my other Song of Ice and Fire miniatures since then, as I've been refining my techniques. The next and last and perhaps most important actor that we're going to have in this whole process of stripping is our stripping agent. For me, that's going to be Simple Green. That's a biodegradable heavy-duty cleaner that you can get in Canada, and I believe portions of the United States. It's not that dangerous compared to stuff like acetone or isopropyl alcohol. It doesn't have massive safety warnings on it, but it actually does a great job of sort of breaking down acrylic paints and plastics in order to allow you to strip them off the miniature. It also has a little bit of a weird clouding effect on the surface of some plastic miniatures that you're going to want to be aware of, but to my understanding that's going to be the case with most things with the exception of, I believe, isopropyl alcohol. Isopropyl alcohol is an excellent alternative if you don't live somewhere where Simple Green is available. However, you need to be aware of the health risks associated with using it insofar as you can't be ingesting it, you need to be careful around your eyes, etc. Obviously, I wouldn't try to get Simple Green in my eyes, but I have no ill effect from getting it on my hands, my skin. It's not an irritant. So, Simple Green is also going to cool down our hot water as well, helping us to avoid any damage to our miniatures. I also put in my metal first and then tested the waters with my finger just to be sure I was comfortable with where it was at. This is obviously going to be a process of feel, but you can take advantage of the hot water, just like we were doing when we were washing our miniatures in the last series, to fix things like the bent sphere on Ornstein here. I found my Dark Souls board game miniatures in particular had a lot of bent, crooked, broken bits when I first got them, and a hot water bath is pretty invaluable in fixing those, I've discovered ever since. The process will start to work really quickly. If you look here, this is 3 minutes literally later. I just stirred it a little bit with my toothbrush in between, and you can see that almost all of the color on Jamie, which is a mixture of inks, paints, and Sharpie, has come off and is soaked into the water. The metal miniature in particular is just, it's wonderful. The simple green works as a great agent on it, and even the primer is almost all off at this point, with just a little bit of work from a toothbrush. So now that the water is that messy, I'm just going to take the miniatures out and put them aside into another bowl, because now you can see there's all the little particles. It actually looks wonderful. You've got the shiny gold flakes that are contained in gold paint swirling around and everything. It looks great, but we're going to want sort of a fresh batch for the stripping of the more tough parts that are still clinging to the miniatures. The stripping from here on is going to take much longer, though of course 10 minutes later we can already see there's a little bit more pigment starting to leach into the water. The simple green is going to be acting constantly as you leave them to sit. So if we come back 3 days later, there's some bits that have flaked off, and already the surface is, you can see, you could just remove it with a nail or with any abrasive thing. So I'm going to be using a toothbrush, and I'm going to be getting into as many of the nooks and crannies as I can. At this point I'm looking at my metal miniature and I say, you know what, that's good, that's fine. 2 weeks later, I come back to them. I've put up a screen because I've got other miniatures behind there, and I don't want to splash simple green on them while I am brushing my miniatures, just to avoid obviously damaging the paint jobs that I'm in the process of working on. As you can see, the primer is clinging in the little nooks and crannies. I'm getting a little bottle brush now to just get into the deep areas and try and give it a little more abrasiveness. I would have used a bottle brush with harder bristles, I think, in the future. So I do recommend trying to get something with stiffish bristles, though obviously you don't want, for example, a metal brush that'll scratch up the surface. Another good alternative is what I'm using here 1 month later, which is a toothpick. You can just use that to sort of scratch away and scrape at the areas that you need to get the paint out of. The overall process is pretty easy, and you'll see I'm not getting every single bit of paint. You can, and if you use a stronger agent, like for example maybe acetone or isopropyl alcohol, you probably could get every single little fleck of paint out, but I would argue that's not really totally necessary. Getting the vast majority of the paint off and out of the cracks and making sure you have some surface definition, like I've done with these guys, you can see there's some little flecks here and there that I didn't want to bother with because I wasn't going to leave them in the simple green for another month or two, which admittedly also would have done the job. I just scraped away what I could and primed over them, and you'll see I got some fantastic results with them. Future series is actually going to cover repainting Jamie and Ornstein, and honestly I think they're some of the best miniatures that I've done to date. So look forward to that. And I hope this has given you an idea of how reasonably simple it is to strip a miniature down and just restart from scratch. It really shouldn't be intimidating. Your products may have to be adapted to wherever you're from, but if you are from Canada, I do have an Amazon affiliate link in the description. I do get money from any purchases made using that Amazon affiliate link, so if you want to support the channel, that would be much appreciated. Otherwise, look around. Like I said, isopropyl alcohol, there are other videos on YouTube that talk about it. I just don't use it because I want to avoid the side effects of using isopropyl or acetone on myself. With all that being said, we're going to flip over here to some examples of Jamie and Ornstein when they were fully painted. I hope you're impressed. I was impressed when I finished them up. Really great, really proud of what happened there, and really proud of what stripping allowed me to do with miniatures that I had painted earlier while I was still learning, and now could use as a stepping stone to make much nicer finished results. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves with this little bite-sized tidbit of technique, and I hope you're looking forward to more in the future. Come around to the channel every week on Friday. I release something, and leave something down in the comments if you got tips about stripping, painting, anything like that, so that I can learn from it and others can as well. And with all that being said, until next time, and go play some games.